Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily. Today's video we're going to be going through my eyeshadow collection. I'm really into a couple palettes that are coming out on the market right now, and I don't have any room to purchase any new palettes because right now my palette organizer is already full and I'm stacking stuff on top of it. So I really need to go through the collection and see, do I actually need any of these palettes? And I don't want to be repeating any shades. So the things that I was looking at the Norvina palette from ABH, and I was also looking at the Flamingo palette from Violet Voss. That one at least I think is unique enough that I don't think I have something completely similar to it in my collection. I am suspicious I have something very similar to Norvina in my collection, and therefore I can probably disqualify getting that one, but I'm not really sure yet. And beyond that, I'm not really sure if I want to get like the Urban Decay Born to Run. I'm not positive what I need, and it may be after I open all these up I don't need much of anything at all, but I do also want to declutter because there's definitely some palettes I haven't used in months. I haven't used since the last time I decluttered, which was back in December, so some of this stuff does need to go. So let's get started. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to open these all up and sort of sort them by color story, and if there's things that are very similar shades in the same couple of palettes, maybe I don't need to keep all of those, and we'll see if I actually have any holes in my collection or not. So I'm going to get that started and I'll be right back. So just starting from here, taking a look at rainbow colored palettes. These are sort of a mixture of finishes, but unless they were like specifically like a very metallic glittery finish like the Urban Decay Heavy Metals or like my Huda Beauty Gemstones Obsessions, since most of these have a mixture of matte, probably with the exclusion of the rainbow palette, but I felt fit the color story best, I think I'm just going to take a look at these as a group and try to narrow this down. I don't think I need to keep all of these palettes. I don't even actually like all of these palettes all of that much. Strange to say, because some of these palettes I absolutely adore. My very favorite rainbow palette would actually happen to be the Violet Voss rainbow palette. It's really, really good. The colors on these are great. They look awesome, like instantaneously. Like, look how metallic foily that is. Like, this palette's awesome. I've used it for shows. It stayed on through stage lighting. It stayed on outdoors. I think this palette was possibly the best thing I bought this whole year. So this I definitely want to keep. I would say the next palette's very similar, especially like it is similar in shades and also quality, would be the Kristen Leanne Kaleidoscope palette collaboration with Urban Decay. The shades are very similar to the Violet Voss, but I found that actually these two palettes worked really well together. I actually did a review of that. I'll put that up in the cards. So I also love this palette, and it's also good for traveling if I want to take it with me. It has a lovely mirror, that sort of thing. The brush is okay. I've used it a little bit, but I do really like this palette and I would like to keep it. So this is where things start to get tricky. Now, my favorite all matte palette that we're looking at right here would be the Kat Von D Pastel Goth. This was a limited edition palette that came out, I think, a year ago, 2 years ago. I'm not even sure at this point, but I do really enjoy this palette and I use it a fair amount. It's got pretty good payoff, and the shades are all pretty great, except I don't love Skull, but I don't tend to like white eyeshadow in the first place. So I do really like this palette. I haven't been using it much. I need to get it out more. So this one I do want to keep. And then I'm sort of going based on like what's my favorite from here. I do want to keep my metal mattes from Kat Von D. I want to take the big one because the big one is much better quality, I would say, than the mini one that came out recently. You get the best shades from here. I basically love all of these foil shades across the top. The mattes, some of them are okay, some of them are not so great, but the foil shades alone are definitely worth it. So I will be keeping this palette for that reason. And then there were three. To be perfectly honest, I haven't used this in months, so I'm going to be letting this Urban Decay Electric palette go. Now, I know this is a great palette, and I'm not saying that it isn't. Sorry, you can see the reflection of my ring light here. It's a great palette, but I don't use it. The shades in here are definitely very interesting, but none of them are undupable in my collection. And some of them are not necessarily the greatest for your eyes because they will stain your lid. It doesn't mean they're not safe to use, but they will stain your lid. So I haven't been using this. I have better shades that I prefer in other palettes, and I think it's okay. I think it's okay to let this go. As for my Huda Beauty Mini Electric Obsessions, I do want to keep this. It's great for travel. It also has a mirror, and I think that all of the shades in this palette are really great. This sort of has a lot of the similar shades as the Electric palette, but this is way more convenient to take around with me, and I do use this on a fairly regular basis. So this I'm going to keep. And last but not least, we have this Kat Von D 10th Anniversary palette. I don't love this palette. My favorite shade is that deep green. Everything else in here is pretty much dupable very easily out of my existing collection. I just love that green. but I don't pull this palette to use that green because I use other greens instead if I'm really feeling it. This is not a palette that gets used. I wish I liked this palette more. I don't think it's bad. I think the formula is perfectly fine. I think I just got caught up in the hype of the 10th anniversary collection. I mean, everything I bought from that collection I wasn't super thrilled with. The Glimmer Veil liquid lipstick is good, but it does get a little chunky sometimes, so I sort of have to shake that one. The other ones don't have that problem. And the highlighter I bought gets a little chunky too, so not my favorite formula. Not super psyched about a lot of stuff they've been putting out lately. Not super psyched with the way that, you know, the face of the brand behaves sometimes. So I really got sucked into this. I didn't need to buy this eyeshadow palette. And as much as I love some of these shimmer shades, and I'm looking at it going, oh, those shades are awesome, I don't ever use them. I don't ever pull this palette. I need to let it go. So I'm letting this go. I love the packaging. It's super cool. I'm letting this go. Buddy, I gotta do the next set. You gotta come down. Thank you, dear. So this is the second grouping of eyeshadow we have to look at. Now a couple of these I like to pair together with each other, so there's certainly something to be said for that. So I know, for example, one of my very favorites would be this Huda Beauty Gemstone Obsessions palettes. This is a little guy, and it's just really awesome. The shades in here are really beautiful. I like to use it on its own, but I also use it to sort of like touch up and, you know, pump up another look, especially if I'm using like a little matte palette. So this is great, especially for travel. So this I definitely want to keep. You can see though that the colors are sort of similar to what you're going to get in the Urban Decay Heavy Metals palette, but I do like the quality on this palette, and I do think a lot of these shades are pretty great. So I'm still keeping this. I went to a great deal of trouble to depot it, but what I want to focus on is like all of these coppery shades over here. That's pretty much covered in this palette. So I don't necessarily need to keep other palettes that will give me the same thing. And for example, I have this little guy from Urban Decay, and this is, I think, called the Troublemaker palette. No, the Fun palette. This is called the Fun palette. And the quality of these shadows is still pretty good considering this palette is super duper old. And I never take it anywhere. I've used it for a look every once in a while just because I sort of feel bad that I don't use it, but I don't use it. And even though the shadows are still good, it's not something that's going to get taken out of my collection anytime soon. And I have other shadows. Like, I think I have every shade in this palette, if not exactly the same, pretty darn close. And that's really all I need. So this, I'm going to finally let this go. Because I'm getting rid of that one, I'm going to keep this Heavy Metals. And because I'm keeping the Heavy Metals, I'm going to get rid of this Urban Decay. This is the Great and Powerful Oz Glinda palette. This also came with an eyeliner, and I have plenty of eyeliner. I don't need to keep the eyeliner, so I'll definitely be decluttering that anyway. These are single shadows that you can pop out, like this one, for example. Again, all of the shades in here are pretty great, but I have duplicates for pretty much all of them. Even these like split pans, I have dupes for those in other brands. This light pink's not really my jam. I've got something for this purple. This isn't a shade that shows up on me. This like metallic-y silver is good, but I think I have exactly the same thing in the Heavy Metals palette, and I don't need this eyeliner. So the only shade I kind of wanted to keep was this split pan, but I sort of have to remind myself, oops, that there's nothing particularly special about those. I can make those shades out of my Kat Von D Alchemist palette, so this palette's gotta go. Now, I really do dig this Fenty Beauty Galaxy palette, and I'm not picking up the Moroccan Spice in the collection, even though I do think they pair well together. I will keep this. This is my only dedicated glitter eyeshadow palette, and I do like it. However, I need to use it more often, and if I don't use it more this year, when the holiday palettes come out in the fall, in this winter, if I'm not using this, I'm gonna have to declutter that then. So I want to get more use out of this. I do think it's really pretty, and I have enjoyed it when I remember to get it out, but it's the only palette like it, so I do want to keep it for now. Now this is where stuff gets a little bit weird. Now I'd already let go of the 10th anniversary collection, and that's because I feel like most of the shades in there are better represented in this particular palette. However, this palette does have a ton of neutrals in it, of varying, you know, shimmer or glimmer finishes, which is how they put it out. This is a little bit big though. It's kind of annoying to travel with it, but I do think that the palette is good and the quality is excellent. What I am going to say is, if I keep this, I'm getting rid of this. And this is the Kat Von D Shade and Eye. This is, you know, the Glimmer Eye Contour palette. I don't have the regular one because I don't use that kind of shades. This has similar finishes to a lot of the stuff that shows up in the Saint and Sinner, and I never use this palette. So this palette's gonna go, and the only reason this one's gonna stay is because I feel like it does have some interesting, unique shades, but I don't need to keep both of these because, you know, of all those neutrals, most of those show up in this palette, and I don't need to keep this one. These are my ABH Prism and Subculture palettes. I like to pair them together. I don't think they're super different, for example, from that Saint and Sinner palette. I probably could get similar looks out of them, but the formulas are very different. I do enjoy the formula on these palettes. They take a little bit of getting used to, but I found a very light hand. I can get some pretty cool looks out of it. So for now, I do want to still keep these, so both of these are going to stay. And last we have the Tarte Make Believe in Yourself Eye and Cheek palette. This highlighter in the center is pretty dumb, but the rest of the colors are still pretty good. I like these because they have a really nice foily finish, and the colors are different enough from the Heavy Metals palette that I still would like to keep this because this one is easy for travel and it still smells good. Admittedly, if it stopped smelling like vanilla, I probably wouldn't like this palette as much, but while it still does, I'm going to keep using it. And last up, we're getting into sort of the neutrals and some of my mattes. You know, these sort of group together because I don't know how else to group them. This Too Faced chocolate bar, I actually haven't used it yet. I purchased it at IMATS because they were having a really good deal, so I am still keeping this. The reason I bought it was because I love this mini one, and when that one goes, I want to make sure that I still have these shadows because the formula I think is great, and I love the colors available to me. However, in looking at that, you can see as it's laying next to like some of the other palettes, if I have that one, I don't necessarily need to keep the other ones. I have been trying to like this little Tarteist Pro to Go, but I don't, so I'm actually going to let that go. I think my mom might like it more than me, but I'm going to let that go because that's not working in my collection. I'm not enjoying using it. It annoys me. This little mini Too Faced, this is like a 500 point perk. I'm totally going to use this until it runs out, and then I already have the backup for it, so those get to stay. Also, this last little Huda Beauty Obsessions, this is the smoky one. I love this guy. This one's definitely staying. I feel like it gives me all the shades I'm looking for, plus it gives me some awesome shimmers. This one is just, these palettes are simply awesome. I have all of the ones in the colors that interest me, but I think they're all great. It just depends on what you're actually going to wear. I know that like the Mauve Obsessions one is not my jam, so I wouldn't wear it, but I do think it's really good, so all of these are great. And now we've come back to this Kat Von D Metal Matte Mini. I kept the big one, but this one was sort of on probation. I did end up keeping it after trying it out again recently because I thought it performed pretty well. I haven't touched it since then, so this is gonna go. These last two palettes aren't very similar at all. First we have this Huda Beauty Desert Dusk. I love this palette. I think it's awesome. The shades in here are super cool. I've made some really neat looks out of this palette. I didn't expect to love it as much as I do, but I absolutely do. So I'm keeping this for sure. And last we have this Urban Decay. This is the Naked Ultimate Basics. These are all matte shadows. I bought this to be my very first all matte palette to try to have neutrals to do like stage makeup. But to be honest, when I use this, I use like 3 or 4 of the colors and the rest of them just don't suit me. And I think it's a perfectly good palette. It's really good to practice on when I was getting started, trying to figure out how to work with more mattes, because I tended to exclusively just do shimmers on most things. But this was sort of my training ground for getting better at using mattes, because this was the first entirely matte palette, and so when I would take it places, like, all right, I need to figure out how to do this. So, you know, I bought it at full price. It was an investment for me, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good palette for me, but I've outgrown it, and I don't use it much anymore, and it's still got lots of shadow left in it, so someone else can love it. So I'm gonna let this go. All right, so everything on the left-hand side is what I'm getting rid of, and everything back in the palette organizer is what I am keeping. So I feel really good about this. I feel like the collection is now manageable. I can see everything. And I think, honestly, the Norvina palette, probably I don't need that. I got other stuff that's going to fulfill the same need. That Flamingo palette, though, I think I could justify that one. So I think I will be picking that up, and I'll do a review once I pick that up. I'm going to go take a look at it in person, see if I can get some swatches, and I'll let you know how it goes. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content on this channel, please subscribe. There'll be some more videos coming up this week. I hope you all have a great evening, and I will see you all soon. Bye!